Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ag Innovation News Podcast, presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. I'm Dan Scogan, your host for the Ag Innovation News Podcast. Guests on this podcast shed light on innovations in value-added agriculture, highlight important voices and work that's being done throughout the Minnesota ag sector, and educate the public about resources and organizations that support Minnesota agriculture. Today, we welcome to the Ag Innovation News Podcast, Lauren McNamara. She is the Senior Vice President of Business Management at SunOpta. She's also on the AURI Board of Directors. Lauren McNamara, welcome to the Ag Innovation News Podcast.
Thank you, Dan. I'm glad to be here.
Let's start with your bio. Tell me about yourself and your pathway that brought you to SunOpta.
I have been working in the food industry in different companies for the last 15 years. I worked at General Mills on the branded side, and I worked at Treehouse on the private label side. And SunOpta is really neat because it actually combines a lot of different go-to-market pathways in one company. So we do branded, we do private label, we do food service, we do co-man, and that appealed to me, as well as just the product portfolio we have in plant-based milks, fruit snacks that are in a better for you space, tea products, protein drinks. I mean, it's a real nice portfolio of nutritious products in growing and really interesting categories distributed through a lot of different ways. And so all of that was what was interested me in coming to SunOpta after being in sort of a purely branded company and then a purely private label company.
So for those who aren't familiar, what or who is SunOpta? What do they do?
SunOpta is a manufacturer. We work on better for you foods in the natural organic space as well as in the conventional space. We have 7 facilities across the country, and we are based here in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. We say we're go-to-market agnostic, and so we work with brands, we work with retailers, we work with chain and QSR restaurants. I mean, we really work with all sorts of partners across the food industry, wherever consumers are able to buy and consume the types of products that we make. We really consider ourselves experts and, frankly, pioneers in plant-based milks. We've been making plant-based milks for decades. In fact, really one of the first in the industry to make soy milk and have been continuously making it for a really long time. And then as other plant-based milks have become popular, we've been working on those as well. So now we have a rather large oat milk business. We also do coconut milk, almond milk, all of the alternative milks you can think of. And we really consider ourselves experts in how to take those raw ingredients, working with farmers, extracting the liquids, and then turning them into dairy alternatives, from milk alternatives to creamers to barista blends that work well with coffee. We feel that we are the experts in anything related to those dairy alternative milks, just because we have some proprietary processes we use. We've got considerable power and innovation, both in sort of the tools and the people. And we've been doing it for a long time. We've been working with a lot of customers in a lot of different areas and just have the knowledge and the resources to be the leaders in this space.
So sounds like a lot of moving pieces or parts, or you got your tentacles on a lot of different things. What were you involved with before you came to SunOpta?
Before I came to SunOpta, in General Mills, I worked on various branded businesses. I worked on in the yogurt portfolio. I worked in the cereal division. I worked on Old El Paso. I mean, it was such a great place to learn about how a business works, about how a food business works, and learn about the food industry, about retail distribution, about building a brand, about manufacturing and innovation. I mean, it was just a phenomenal experience. And the brands that you work on there are beloved brands that have been around for a long time. And it's really exciting to be able to tell someone you work on a thing that they're eating every single day and that you can find on every grocery store shelf. So that was really neat. And then I moved over to Flagstone Foods, which was in St. Paul, and that was owned by Treehouse Foods, which is a larger private label manufacturer. They do private label manufacturing for a lot of different categories. In Flagstone Foods, we specialized in nuts and trail mix. So that was really fun because it's a snacking item, and trail mix is such a, I think, a creative item where you can come up with all these really fun different mixes. You're working with a lot of different ingredients. There's always innovation going on. And then you also really have to be very sharp on the commodity side. All of the nuts that you mix in, whether it's peanuts or cashews or almonds that come from all different places around the world, and learning about the crop seasons and the growing conditions and the different locations and how they're processed was super, super interesting. So that was a great experience for a lot of different reasons. And after being there, then I think SunOpta was a really natural fit for me because we do have some brands, we do a lot of private label, and all of the things that I learned at General Mills and things I learned at Flagstone have really helped drive the business here across the categories that we participate in.
You mentioned, I think you said 7 facilities under SunOpta. Are they all doing similar work, or are they 7 different divisions, or how does that line up?
Some of them are similar. So we have 2 fruit snacks plants, and then we have 4 aseptic plants and 1 plant that does only extraction, although we have extraction in some of our aseptic plants too. So the way we like to think about it is we have a geographic network across the United States with really localized production. And one of our core values is sustainability. And so if you're able to produce locally, that takes miles off the road. You're shipping less stuff, less miles across the country. You're also able to get things out a lot faster in those local areas. So we have this really great network that just allows that localized production, and I think is a real service to our customers who may only operate in certain areas, or if they operate nationwide, it does give them that redundancy within their supply chain to know that if something happens in this plant, we've got a backup and we're able to keep them in supply no matter what.
So when you think about your move to SunOpta, is there something really glaring that you said, yes, I want to go work there? Was there something that really drew you to SunOpta?
When I had first heard of SunOpta, they were actually a supplier in one of my previous roles. And so I knew very little about them as a company. And then as I learned more, I learned about the breadth of products that they have. And that was really interesting to me. And just the products, the categories that we participate in particular, plant-based milk is a really dynamic category. It's growing a ton. There's a lot of interest there. There's a lot of innovation there, and it has a real impact on our food ecosystem. And so I love that. And I love the different go-to-market avenues. It's not one thing, it's a lot of different things, which just allows us to work with a lot of great customers and partners across the industry. And I really love that variety and that ability to work across these different go-to-market streams. I think that's been really attractive. And then just where SunOpta is as a company, it's a growth company. And so we've been doing a ton of investment. We've been entering new categories. We just built a new plant in Texas. And so the ability to work on growth categories in a growth company and make those investments to grow our business is really exciting.
And really, Lauren, your resume includes a lot of work in that entrepreneurial food industry. You've been around those entrepreneurs for much of your career, haven't you?
Yes, and that's been really fun. Some of what we do at SunOpta feels entrepreneurial, but it's certainly not the same as an individual who has an idea and is starting up something on their own. And so it's been really fun for me, even in my current job, to sometimes work with entrepreneurs, but also just outside of SunOpta to work with organizations that pair entrepreneurs with mentors to help answer questions or learn about the industry or polish their story or whatever it is. So I've worked with the Minnesota Cup. At this point, I've gotten a bunch of others in my organization involved to be mentors in that. And then with Techstars Farm to Fork program, which is a great way to be involved in some up and coming businesses and feel like you're able to help and make a difference. And just some of the ideas that people are coming up with are just incredibly brilliant. And I'm always in awe of anyone who is taking the entrepreneurial journey. First, to just have the idea and then pursue it is just a really special thing. And I love the opportunity to be able to help and be involved in a very small way.
I might want to come back and dig a little deeper on that in just a bit. But as Senior Vice President of the Business Management at SunOpta, what's your role there, or what's your team working on?
I work on our whole business, from our aseptic plants to our extraction to our fruit snacks. We work with a fantastic suite of current customers. manufacturing products, working with them on what new products can we bring to market. There's always sort of ongoing work to be done around sourcing, around packaging changes, around formula changes, production and getting product out there. So there's just sort of always the care and feeding of the current business. And then we're always looking at ways to grow and make sure that we are growing ahead of our customers' needs so that we can continue to provide the space and the infrastructure for them to grow as well. So always looking ahead at where do we need to invest to make sure that we've got the right capabilities, that we have capacity available, we have the infrastructure and the tools available to continue growing with current customers and then expanding the categories that we participate in and the customers who we're able to work with. And I think getting into oat milk was a great example a couple of years ago when we saw that on the scene. We said, this feels like it's going to be big. Oat milk has a lot of runway. It's delicious. People love oats. There's health benefits. It's gluten-free. It's a sustainable crop. Like, this is going to be big. And so that was a great example of where SunOpta said, we can play here. And we made a big investment in Alexandria, Minnesota to build a new oat-based facility, which has been full ever since. And we built a second one in our California plant so that we're not shipping it across the country. But that's an example of the stuff that we're always looking out for. What's next? How do we build to support it ahead of the market and ahead of our customers? We also just built a new plant in Midlothian, Texas that, again, will increase our capacity, allow our customers to grow, allow them to produce in more localized regions, and added a new capability, which is a single serving size package versus the multi-serve that we have at our other plants, so that we're able to enter new categories like nutritional drinks that are typically sold in that size. So it's pretty exciting to see. And that's a big part of my job, is to kind of figure out what are the things that we're going to do over the next few years to continue growing our business.
Got a couple more SunOpta questions, and we're going to turn our attention a little bit to AURI and your work on their board of directors. But I want to remind our listeners that you're listening to the Ag Innovation News Podcast. And today's guest is Lauren McNamara. Lauren is the Senior Vice President of Business Management at SunOpta and is also on the AURI board of directors. I want to protect SunOpta and the people you work with, so I'm not going to ask for specifics, but are you recruiting new clients or are they coming to you?
It goes both ways, actually. Sometimes we identify someone that would be a really good fit for either an innovation that we have or an idea we have. A lot of times people find us either because through industry contacts or just hearing about us via vendors or mutual acquaintances or things like that. We have a pretty special skill set of things that we do. If you're looking for an aseptic manufacturer or if you're looking for plant-based milks, I think we're pretty well known throughout the industry as a leader in both of those things. And so we do get a lot of people that come to us looking to partner, which is pretty exciting to have a reputation like that in the industry. And so it definitely goes both ways.
But I'm guessing when they come to you, they should have had some of their good work done because they're going to be faced with a pretty rigorous process to see if it's going to be a good match.
Yeah, absolutely. Like any co-packer, we have to make sure that what we're bringing into our facilities is a good fit for us. So there's kind of can we make it? Is this something that works with our equipment? Is it a business that we believe in and that we see long-term partnership potential in? We definitely love those long-term relationships with our partners and building businesses together. And so we do want to make sure that we put in the work to get something up and running in our facilities, that it's going to be a long-term thing that we all believe in. We look for things that are established, that have a track record. So there's definitely things that if a business that's looking for a co-packer needs to come with some of that basic information to make sure that both sides can figure out if it's a good fit.
We're going to do a bit of a pivot here, but Lauren, you were named Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal's 40 Under 40. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that was a really exciting recognition. I was really honored to be part of that group. got it in right under the wire for the under 40 part. But it was really neat to see how many interesting things were going on around the Twin Cities with that under 40 age group and a lot of business leaders across the area. So unfortunately, it was kind of at the tail end of COVID. So the interactions weren't as robust as I think in prior years, just because they were trying not to have too many people in the same space together out of caution. But I did get to meet a few of my fellow nominees or award winners, and it was really neat just to see what people were up to around the Twin Cities.
I guess that's kind of my follow-up question to that. Did an award like that change your perspective on how you do your work, or did it just grow your network, or have you been able to leverage that award in any way in getting your work done?
I don't know that it changed how I approach things too much. I think it was really humbling recognition and just an honor to be part of that group. And so I do like to sometimes look at what other folks are up to who have been part of that group and in my cohort. But I don't know that it really changed how I do my day-to-day too much.
I did mention in our introduction that you're also on the AURI Board of Directors at Agricultural Utilization Research Institute. How did you come to pursue that seat, and how did you go through that process?
I had interacted with AURI in a couple different ways through industry conferences and events. We had participated in a couple different things throughout the years. And so I always was aware of them and the role in the food and ag ecosystem in Minnesota. And a board seat opened, and I had talked to some folks on the board about what does a good board member look like and what would more involvement in the organization look like. And it sounded like a good fit for what I'm really interested in and where I think I can be helpful. And I have always wanted to be just more involved longer term in some of building the industry within Minnesota. I think it's just this gem of a place where we have so many food and ag resources corporately, agriculturally, and it's just sort of ripe for more investment, more growth, more attention. And I think AURI is this hidden gem that brings all of that together. And so it was just really a great thing to be a part of. And so I'm really excited that I was asked to be part of the board, and it's been really fun to be on it a little over a year here.
Maybe an unfair question, but what skill sets do you think you bring to the board?
I'm a representative sort of in agribusiness. And so I think I bring a skill set of how do you have a business perspective on some of this stuff? Is it able to be monetized? What value is it bringing to the market? Some of the logistics around sourcing and manufacturing, bringing an eye towards consumer trends and how do you get something into retail? How do you scale something? What are practical considerations? And so I hope I'm able to bring some of that knowledge and experience to the board as different initiatives are considered and different questions arise about how do we do this, or how do we evaluate this thing, or whatever the question is. Working on the strategy for a corporate organization is not dissimilar from a nonprofit. And so I hope that is helpful.
AURI is involved in the whole gamut of the ag ecosystem, from USDA to corn and soybeans, some of the larger agriculture, right down to the very small entrepreneurs who are trying to get their feet under them. So give me some initial thoughts in the last year or so, some of the work that AURI is involved with and your perspective on the work that they're doing.
I have been so impressed by the breadth of work that AURI does. As a small organization, it is just amazing how many people they're able to work with, the skills that they bring. I mean, the talent that they have within the org is really top notch, as well as some of the tools and technology and resources that they have. I mean, it's really incredible. And I love that they serve such a broad population, from a single entrepreneur to family-owned businesses to farmers to corporate partners, government organizations, other nonprofit partnerships. I mean, it's just really incredible what AURI is able to accomplish. I've been super impressed with how much impact they make in the state of Minnesota and beyond. And I think one of the initiatives is how do we get credit for it, and how do we track exactly what we're doing, because everything they do has ripple effects on really creating more and more value for the industry here in Minnesota.
And finally, Lauren, just to our podcast listeners who are also usually quite scattered in the diversity of what they're involved with, from your experiences with SunOpta, before that on the AURI board, what would you like to leave our listeners with today? What's your last word?
What's really struck me being in the food industry and in the AURI board and all my other experience with entrepreneurs is that I have so much respect for our food system and the supply chain and all of the different people involved. I mean, there is so much there. You pull a product off your grocery store shelf, and the average consumer has no idea how much has gone into getting that product there, from the people that are growing the inputs to the people that are trucking them across the country to the people that are manufacturing them to the people that are selling them in, the people designing the package. I mean, there is so much that goes into every single thing. And it just deserves a lot of respect and recognition on how we're able to scale the food supply chain, feed so many people at reasonable costs, make so many different varieties of things available. It never ceases to amaze me how this industry has evolved and how much we're able to offer to consumers. And I'm really proud to be a part of that.
Well, Lauren, I've enjoyed our conversation today, and I want to thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
We've been visiting with Lauren McNamara, AURI board member and Senior Vice President of Business Management with SunOpta. I want to thank you for joining us today, and thank you for listening to the Ag Innovation News Podcast, presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. Thanks to my podcast crew, Lisa Martinez, AURI Communications Manager, and the editor of this production. If you want to learn more about AURI, visit auri.org.